That's it for today's rundown. Now, last week we were shocked to learn that LucasArts has been shut down by its parent company, Disney. We've already taken a look at our own relationship with the studio, but we thought it was important to walk through the company's 30-year history and examine just how LucasArts not only impacted video games, but the entire entertainment industry. Fresh off the success of the first Star Wars film, George Lucas set out to expand his production company, Lucasfilm, into a full-fledged entertainment empire that included Skywalker Sound and Industrial Light and Magic. Lucas was also one of the first filmmakers to see the potential in the newest entertainment medium, video games, and he created Lucasfilm Games in 1982 to get in on the ground floor. The subsidiary started out creating primitive titles for early computers like the Atari 5200 and Commodore 64, but soon began working with other developers on the video game adaptations of Lucasfilm movies like The Empire Strikes Back and Labyrinth. In 1987, Lucasfilm Games had one of its first breakout hits with Maniac Mansion, a title that it developed and published on its own. Maniac Mansion was a point-and-click adventure game with a strong emphasis on story and character development. It also had plenty of humor, thanks in part to the input from first-time game designer Ron Gilbert, who would go on to become the industry heavyweight behind recent hits like Death Spank and The Cave. The Secret of Monkey Island arrived in 1990. Tim Schafer, another one of today's gaming heavyweights and founder of Double Fine Productions, got his start while serving as a writer on the game. He worked under Ron Gilbert, and the two have collaborated several times since.
And what was he like on Monkey Island? Was he a little punk?
He was a terror. Yeah, most of the time we had meetings and we didn't tell Tim when they were happening.
Because I was always getting into cupboards and throwing the Tupperware everywhere and like
timeouts in the corner.
Yeah.
After The Secret of Monkey Island, other classic titles like Day of the Tentacle and Zombies Ate My Neighbors were released within the span of a few years, a period that is now known as the golden era of adventure games. It was during this time that Lucasfilm Games became LucasArts. By the mid-1990s, the Star Wars prequels were already in development, so LucasArts shifted its focus from adventure games to create more action-oriented titles set in a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars fans will have fond memories of games like X-Wing, Rebel Assault, and Dark Forces, which helped expand the Star Wars universe and kept it fresh in people's minds while waiting for the new films. Dozens of Star Wars games were released in the years leading up to the prequels. Some were created internally at LucasArts, while many were handed off to third-party developers, with LucasArts serving as publisher. Some adventure games were also released during this time, notably Full Throttle in 1995 and the much-loved Grim Fandango in 1998. But with the cancellation of Full Throttle 2, it became clear that LucasArts had become the house of Star Wars and little else. The notable exception to that rule was the other big Lucasfilm franchise, Indiana Jones. The daring treasure hunter got a string of his own action games, including The Infernal Machine and The Emperor's Tomb. With the large influx of Star Wars games coming out of LucasArts, this period saw several flops. One of them was the real-time strategy game Star Wars Rebellion, which offered less action than its predecessors.
We knew that putting a deep strategy into the Star Wars universe would take a few people by surprise.
By the time the Star Wars prequels were hitting theaters, many fans saw the quality of the games continue to drop. There were still a few indisputable gems like 2003's Knights of the Old Republic and 2004's Battlefront, which borrowed elements of the successful Battlefield series from Electronic Arts.
We do things that you can't do in a realistic game. You can't fly a TIE fighter, you can't fly an X-Wing, you can't do that in a more realistic game. So we give you everything that you've ever wanted to be able to do in the Star Wars universe any way you want to do it.
That aside, the hits were getting fewer and farther between. As a result, LucasArts cut back the number of new games coming down the pipe in 2005 and made an effort to focus on publishing duties for more non-Star Wars projects like the third-person shooters, Mercenaries, and Fracture. It also canceled the long-in-development Star Wars Battlefront 3, a controversial decision that still angers fans to this day. Then, in 2008, LucasArts released Star Wars The Force Unleashed. Developed internally, it would become one of the best-selling Star Wars games of all time. Things continued to look good thanks to the success of the LEGO Star Wars series, and the studio even got back in touch with its adventure game roots by issuing an HD remake of Monkey Island and the all-new Tales of Monkey Island in 2010. But then the release of Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2 failed to connect with fans of the first game and didn't sell nearly as well as hoped. LucasArts also passed off publishing duties of the big-budget MMO Star Wars The Old Republic to Electronic Arts and continued to get smaller and smaller as it released fewer and fewer hits. LucasArts also failed to release a highly anticipated new Indiana Jones game that was announced in 2006. It would have been a AAA action game with a new story co-written by George Lucas, but it never saw the light of day.
We are rolling out some exciting new technology in the Indiana Jones game. I think it's really going to change the way people play games. It's going to fundamentally change the way people interact with games.
Yeah, it didn't. LucasArts did, however, give us a Lego Indiana Jones game and the Wii title Staff of Kings in 2009, but not the game we were waiting for. In late 2012, Disney purchased Lucasfilm, and LucasArts was included in the deal. LucasArts is now expected to be nothing more than a licensing house and merely oversee the development of new projects by other developers. Despite the studio's hit-and-miss record of the last few years, there's still plenty of reasons to be sorry to see it go. LucasArts was an industry trailblazer. 30 years ago, it was one of the first developers to show that video games could have a wide appeal and tell interesting stories that could complement and expand upon existing properties like movies.
Don't everybody thank me at once.
There was always magic in the air every time we visited LucasArts, so it is a shame to see the closure of the house that Star Wars built. However, we are excited to see what Disney has planned for these properties. Stay tuned. EP Daily will be right back.